Ever get that feeling? Like you're putting in the work, the hours are going by, but you just feel kind of drained at the end of the day? And not like you really got that much done.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like running on a treadmill and getting nowhere.
Exactly. It's like you've been busy, but have you actually been productive? Ali Abdaal talks about this in his book. He mentions one Christmas Day when he was working as a junior doctor, stuck on a hospital shift.
Oh, wow. Christmas Day. That's rough.
I know, right? And he was saying how unproductive he was that day, couldn't even get through his basic tasks, even tried to psych himself up with Muhammad Ali quotes in the bathroom, but nothing seemed to work.
It's funny how sometimes, even when we try all the usual motivational tricks, we still end up feeling stuck.
Yeah, it's super frustrating. And I bet it's something a lot of people listening can relate to. That gap between how much effort we put in and what we actually get done.
Totally. It's a pretty universal feeling, Especially these days with, well, everything. There's so much vying for our attentions. We're constantly bombarded with messages about being more disciplined, pushing ourselves harder. But does that actually work?
That's the big question, isn't it? And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. We're diving deep into the ideas in Ali Abdaal's book, Feel Good Productivity. And it's kind of like what you were just saying, forget about productivity always being this uphill battle.
Yeah, constantly having to force yourself.
Right. And Abdaal, he actually studied psychology along with getting his medical degree. So he comes at this from a really interesting perspective. He's basically saying that making productivity enjoyable, making it work with our well-being, can make us way more effective in the long run.
It's a really refreshing perspective because it kind of flips the script on the whole no pain, no gain mentality.
Yeah. Exactly. And Abdaal's own story, going from a med student who is struggling to stay on top of things to someone who clearly knows how to get things done, well, it definitely adds a lot of weight to his ideas.
Yeah, he's walked the walk, so to speak.
Right. So for everyone listening, our goal today is to unpack those, I guess you could call them surprising secrets of feel-good productivity. And we'll be drawing from a bunch of different sources that you guys shared with us. We want to give you those key takeaways, the stuff that can really make a difference without you having to go through everything yourself.
Think of this as your shortcut to a more enjoyable and fulfilling way of getting things done.
I like that. So I thought we could start with this classic brain teaser called the candle problem. Have you ever heard of it?
I think so, yeah. Vaguely, though. Remind me how it goes.
Okay, so imagine this. You have a candle, a box of matches, and a box full of thumbtacks.
Okay, got it. What's the problem?
The problem is you have to attach this candle to a corkboard on the wall. But here's the catch. You have to do it in a way that when you light the candle, the wax doesn't drip onto the table below.
That's tricky. Let me think.
So what most people immediately try to do is figure out how to stick the candle directly to the board using the thumbtacks.
Right, try to melt some wax and use it as glue or something.
Exactly. But they often miss the real solution. The aha moment is realizing that the box holding the thumbtacks can be used as a little platform, like a tiny shelf or a cup to hold the candle.
Oh, that's clever. I totally didn't think of that.
And that's the whole point. This simple puzzle was used by a researcher named Alice Eisen to study how our mood affects creativity. She found that people in a good mood were way more likely to solve this problem, to see that different use for the box.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. It's like being in a positive mood kind of loosens up our thinking, lets us see possibilities that we might totally miss when we're feeling stressed or down.
Makes sense. It's like that feeling when you're stuck on a problem and then you go for a walk or take a break and suddenly the solution just pops into your head.
Yes, exactly. But how does all this apply to everyday productivity? It's not like we're constantly attaching candles to walls, right?
Good point. I mean, I'm not. Anyway, but there's this theory called the broaden and build theory developed by Barbara Fredrickson. And it basically says that positive emotions don't just make us feel good in the moment. They actually expand our attention and our mental resources. This helps us develop new skills and become more resilient.
Okay, so it's like good vibes give us superpowers.
In a way, yes. Think of it as positive emotions widening your field of vision. It allows you to see more possibilities, to be more adaptable and resourceful in the long run.
So it's not just a fleeting feeling of happiness, it has a lasting impact on what we can do.
Exactly. And this ties directly into the science of what Ali Abdaal calls feel-good hormones.
Ooh, hormones, like the chemical messengers in our body.
Exactly. We're talking about things like endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. You've probably heard of at least some of these. Endorphins are often released during exercise. They give us that feeling of being energized and help reduce pain.
That runner's high feeling.
Exactly. Then there's serotonin, which is crucial for regulating our mood and giving us a sense of well-being. It helps us stay calm, focused, and stable.
So if you're feeling anxious or scattered, that's probably serotonin going a bit haywire.
Could be, yeah. And then there's dopamine, the reward hormone, If what drives our motivation and focus makes us want to achieve things and feel that sense of satisfaction. And then finally, we have oxytocin, which is sometimes called the love hormone because it strengthens our social bonds and connections. And that, also plays a huge role in our mood and overall productivity.
So it's like our body has this natural built-in system to make us feel good and get things done.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. And Abdal's point is that these hormones create this, virtuous cycle. Feeling good releases these chemicals, which gives us more energy and focus, which then leads to greater productivity. And that sense of accomplishment makes us feel even better, so it just keeps building.
It's a positive feedback loop, exactly.
Which means that even small steps towards feeling better can have a really big impact over time. Especially for someone who's feeling stuck in a rut, it could be the spark that gets them moving.
Absolutely. And this isn't just about individual tasks either, There's also this thing called the undoing hypothesis. It suggests that positive emotions can actually help our body recover faster from stress. There was this study where they showed people either positive or negative emotion-inducing films, and the ones who watched the positive films showed faster physiological recovery after a stressful task.
So it's like good feelings act as a buffer against stress.
Yeah, precisely. So feeling good isn't just some kind of reward after being productive. It's actually essential to being productive in the first place. It's part of what helps us manage stress and just generally function well, both mentally and physically.
It's like trying to run a car on empty. You might get somewhere, but it's going to be a struggle.
Exactly. And a pretty uncomfortable ride, I'd imagine.
Definitely. So to bring this back to the bigger picture, a 2005 study, which looked at hundreds of other studies involving 275,000 people, found a really clear pattern.
Oh, wow, that's a lot of data.
I know, right? And basically they concluded that feeling good doesn't just come after success, it actually often precedes it. Happiness and well-being are strong predictors of success in all different parts of life, including work.
So it's not about grinding yourself down to eventually reach some point where you can finally relax and be happy.
Right. The evidence suggests that feeling good can actually pave the way to success. So the question then becomes, how do we actively cultivate these feel-good states to boost our productivity?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. And one of the key areas Abdaal explores is the power of play. And I know what you might be thinking.
Like, ditch work and go to the park.
That's one way to do it. But he's not just talking about playing games, although he does share this really funny story about his past obsession with World of Warcraft.
Oh no, not another WoW story.
It's a good one, I promise. But what I found really interesting was his reflection that it wasn't just the mechanics of the game that got him hooked, it was also that feeling of escaping reality, taking on a new identity.
Yeah.
Becoming his blood elf warlock, Sephiroth.
I can see that. It's like stepping into a different world for a while.
Exactly. And he actually suggests this choose your character experiment.
What is that?
Well, he outlines different play personalities, like the explorer, the creator, the storyteller, even the joker.
Okay, I see where he's going with this.
The idea isn't to literally become a different person. It's more about figuring out which of these approaches really speaks to you and then bringing that playful energy into even the most boring tasks. If you connect with the storyteller, that report you have to write suddenly becomes a narrative with a beginning, middle, and a twist ending.
Right. How can you make this interesting? How can you make it a story? That's a cool way to look at it.
Exactly. It's about changing your perspective, right? And making things more engaging.
It makes me think about, if you're facing a mountain of emails.
Ugh, the worst.
Haha, I know. But if you see yourself as the explorer, you could approach it like you're uncovering hidden gems or solving little mini mysteries in each message.
I love that, turning those dreaded emails into a quest. And you know what's interesting? This idea of playfulness actually connects with research that's been done on rats.
Wait, rats? Seriously?
I know, right? Sounds strange. But a researcher named Jack Panksup found that rats actually enjoy playing. And when they do, their brains release dopamine, that reward hormone we talked about earlier.
So basically, playfulness is wired into our brains.
Yeah, and it triggers those feel-good chemicals.
It's like that Mary Poppins quote, right? In every job that must be done, there's an element of fun. You find the fun and snap. The job's a game.
That's exactly what Abdaal references in the book. He even tried this out himself when he was struggling with biochemistry.
What did he do?
He put up a Post-it note that said, "What would this look like if it were fun?" And he ended up listening to the Lord of the Rings soundtrack while he studied.
Uh-huh. That's great.
It's a good reminder, right? Like, even for the most boring or tedious tasks, there's probably a way to make it a little bit more enjoyable if we just get creative.
Absolutely. And this idea of making the process itself enjoyable links really well to this concept called flow, developed by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Flow state. I've heard of that. Isn't that when you're totally absorbed in something?
Yeah, exactly. When you're so focused on the activity that you kind of lose track of time. Think of like someone who's super into their hobby or a musician who's totally lost in their performance. They're not focused on the outcome. They're just in the moment, enjoying the experience itself.
And that's where the real joy and fulfillment comes from, right? Being fully present and engaged.
Right. And, stress can totally kill that playful
Well,
spirit.
for sure. It's like stress sucks all the joy out of everything.
Exactly. There are these studies where they found that rats who were stressed were way less likely to play. It's like our natural inclination to be playful and explore just gets shut down when we're under pressure.
It makes total sense. Like, when you're stressed out, the last thing you want to do is play around and experiment, You just want to survive.
Exactly. So if we want to encourage more playfulness in our work and lives, we need to try to lower the stakes.
Like, take the pressure off a bit.
Exactly. And that involves how we view failure. There's this former NASA engineer named Mark Rober who has a great perspective on this. He talks about how even small negative consequences can make us afraid to try new things and make mistakes.
Yeah, we become so risk averse.
Right. But what if we looked at those failures as simply data points, as valuable information that helps us learn and get better?
Okay, I like that reframing. Instead of seeing a mistake as a personal failing, it becomes a learning opportunity.
Exactly. And this connects to the idea of approaching things with sincerity rather than excessive seriousness. Like, think about it. The people you enjoy playing games with, they're usually the ones who are engaged, present, but not overly worried about winning or losing.
Yeah,
Okay?
they're just having fun.
Exactly. And we can bring that same attitude to our work. When things start to feel overwhelming, we can ask ourselves, how can I approach this with a little less pressure, a little more genuine engagement? It'd be super helpful for reducing stress and making things more enjoyable.
It reminds me of that humor you see in some really serious professions, like the doctors on Grey's Anatomy, for example. Even in intense situations, they find ways to bring in a bit of lightness and playfulness.
Yeah, it makes things more bearable,
Yeah.
both for themselves and the people around them.
So we've talked about playfulness, whether it's seeking adventure, taking on a different persona, getting curious, focusing on the process, lowering the pressure, or being sincere. It seems like it's a super powerful way to energize ourselves and make productivity feel good.
Totally. It's like injecting some fun back into the equation.
And speaking of energizers, let's move on to the next one Abdal talks about.
Power.
Okay, power. Let's dive in.
He starts by talking about self-efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
In simple terms, it's how much we believe in our own ability to succeed in different situations.
Oh, yeah, like, do you believe you can actually do the thing you're setting out to do? Exactly. And this guy, Albert Bandura, he's the one who really came up with this concept. And tons of research, including a major analysis in 1998, has shown a strong link between self-efficacy and how well people perform in work situations. Basically, believing you can do something is often the first step towards actually being able to do it.
It's that whole mind over matter thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just some new age mumbo jumbo. It's actually backed up by science.
Right. And the cool thing is, confidence isn't something you're just born with.
Like, you can actually build your confidence.
Exactly. It's something you develop and can actively work on.
That's encouraging.
I know, right? So how do you actually boost your self-efficacy? Abdul talks about this study they did with cyclists called the confidence switch.
Interesting name.
Yeah. And they found that just by using specific positive self-talk before a race, the cyclists could actually change their perception of how hard they were working and improve their endurance.
Wow. So like just talking to yourself in a positive way can actually make a physical difference.
That's what the research suggests. It's like being your own personal cheerleader.
Yeah, I get that. But what kind of things should you be telling yourself?
Well, in the study, they focused on affirmations that emphasize the cyclist's capabilities. Things like, my legs are strong, or I can maintain this pace.
So it's about focusing on what you can do, not what you can't do.
Exactly. And it's not just about self-talk either. There's also this thing called the social model method, which is basically about learning by watching other people succeed. There was this study they did at Clemson University using a climbing wall.
A climbing wall? That sounds kind of fun.
I know, right? And what they found was that people's confidence in their own climbing ability actually went up after watching others successfully climb the wall, even if they hadn't climbed it themselves yet.
It's like seeing someone else achieve something you thought was impossible, and suddenly it feels a little more within reach.
Exactly. It broadens your sense of what's possible.
Uh-huh.
And Abdal also uses this idea of leveling up skills. He compares it to how characters in stories like Star Wars, The Hunger Games, and Avatar, The Last Airbender, start out as beginners and then gradually overcome challenges and build their skills.
It's that classic hero's journey, right? They face setbacks, they learn, they grow stronger.
Right. And it reminds us that our own abilities develop over time with consistent effort and practice, even if it feels slow sometimes.
It's that whole Rome wasn't built in a day thing,
Oops,
right?
exactly. And this actually connects to the Japanese concept of shoshin, which means beginner's mind. It's about approaching tasks, even those we're familiar with a sense of curiosity and openness, just like a beginner.
So it's about avoiding that, like, I know it all attitude.
Exactly. Because that can make us complacent and stuck in our ways. Having a beginner's mind fosters continuous learning and opens us up to new ways of doing things.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do you cultivate that beginner's mind, especially when you've been doing something for a long time?
One way is to actively seek out new perspectives, like challenge your own assumptions. Ask yourself, if I were doing this for the first time, what would I notice? What questions would I ask?
That's a good exercise.
And then there's another really cool concept related to power that Abdaal talks about called the protege effect.
Protege, like a student or apprentice.
Yeah, exactly. It's the idea that we learn something best when we have to teach it to someone else. There was this fascinating study done at Stanford where they used computer-generated avatars.
Avatars, like in virtual reality.
Yeah, and they told some students they would have to teach the material to an avatar, and those students actually learned the material more effectively than the ones who were just studying for a test.
Wow, so the active teaching actually enhances your own learning.
It seems that way. It's like that saying, you only truly understand something when you can explain it to someone else.
It makes you think about all the times we've tried to explain something to someone and realized we didn't actually know it as well as we thought we did.
For sure. And lastly, within this idea of power as an energizer, we have the crucial concept of intrinsic motivation.
Okay, so we're not talking about external rewards like money or praise.
No, intrinsic motivation comes from within. It's that genuine desire to learn and grow, driven by a sense of autonomy and ownership over what you're doing.
So it's like doing something because you actually enjoy it, not just because you have to.
Right. And there's this theory called self-determination theory developed by Edward Dessay and Richard Ryan, which emphasizes that lasting motivation comes from this internal drive, not from external pressure.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like when you're forced to do something, you're way less likely to be fully engaged.
Exactly. And there was this classic study using those Soma puzzle cubes. They found that offering people money to solve the puzzle could actually decrease their intrinsic motivation.
Really? Why is that?
Because it took away their sense of autonomy. Like they were no longer doing it just for the joy of solving the puzzle, they were doing it for the reward.
So it became more about the external motivation than the internal drive.
Exactly. And this highlights how important it is to feel like you have control over your tasks and your learning.
Yeah, that sense of ownership can be super motivating.
Like that story of Filet Office 1066, the programmer who automated his entire job.
Oh yeah, I read about that.
Right. While his methods might have been a little extreme, it really highlights that intrinsic drive to take ownership of a process and find a better way to do things, even in situations where we might feel trapped or powerless.
Yeah, it's like hacking the system.
Exactly. And this leads to that final point Abdal makes about owning your mindset.
What does he mean by that?
It's about shifting from that feeling of, I have to do something, to I choose to do it. It's a simple change in language, but it can have a huge impact on how you feel.
It's about recognizing the agency you have, right?
Exactly. And that you have the power to choose how you approach things.
So we've explored play and power as energizers for productivity. Now let's dive into the third one, people.
This is all about the energy we get or lose from our interactions with others. Abdal calls it relational energy. He mentions this energy map exercise.
An energy map, what's that?
Well, it's where people in an organization basically map out who energizes them and who drains them.
That sounds like it could get messy.
Huh, maybe. But what's interesting is that there's often a lot of agreement about who falls into each category. Like, some people just leave you feeling inspired and motivated.
Yeah, like you could talk to them for hours and feel totally energized afterward.
Exactly. And then there are others who just suck the energy right out of you.
The energy vampires, we've all met them.
Haha, totally. And Abdal also talks about the importance of finding your scene.
Scene. Like a group of like-minded people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He uses this example of Brian Eno, the musician, who had this chance encounter that ended up having a huge impact on his career. It highlights how important it is to connect with people who share your passions and inspire you.
Yeah, finding your tribe, so to speak.
Exactly. And then there's this comrade mindset experiment that Abdal mentions. They found that people who thought they were working on a puzzle collaboratively with another student actually worked harder and longer than those who thought they were working alone.
So even just believing you're part of a team can boost your motivation.
That's what the research suggests. It highlights the importance of seeing your colleagues as teammates rather than competitors.
Right. That's a big shift in perspective.
Yeah, it can make a huge difference in how you approach your work together. And even when you're not directly collaborating, finding synchronicity can be really energizing. Like Abdal talks about his experience with the London Writers' Salon, where he would work alongside other writers, but remotely.
So they weren't physically together, but they were working at the same time.
Right. And even though they were working on separate projects, that shared focus, that sense of community boosted his productivity and well-being. It's like you're part of something bigger than yourself, even when you're working independently.
Yeah, it's like that feeling you get when you go to the library or a coffee shop to work.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by other people who are also focused on their work, and it creates a really productive atmosphere.
Exactly. It's almost like having a study buddy, even if you're not working on the exact same thing.
And then there's this concept of the helper's high, which is basically the idea that helping other people can make you feel really good.
Wait, so being kind actually boosts your own energy levels?
Yeah. Alan Lux did research on this, and he found that acts of kindness and helping others release those same feel-good hormones we talked about earlier, like dopamine and oxytocin.
It's like a win-win situation.
Totally. Reaching out to support a colleague or offer assistance isn't just good for them, it's good for you too. And on that note, it's also really important to be willing to ask for help when you need it. There's this thing called the Benjamin Franklin effect.
Benjamin Franklin effect, what's that?
It's this weird psychological phenomenon where asking someone for a favor can actually make them like you more.
Really?
Yeah.
That seems counterintuitive.
I know. But it suggests that we shouldn't be afraid to ask for support. People often feel valued when you ask for their expertise or assistance.
So it's about reframing asking for help as an opportunity for connection, not as a sign of weakness.
Exactly. And lastly, within this realm of people, it's important to pay attention to how we communicate, both the good and the not so good.
Like how we deliver news.
Exactly. There's this research by Shelley Gable that shows how enthusiastically celebrating other people's successes, what's called active constructive responding, can actually strengthen relationships and make everyone feel better. It's about genuinely engaging with their good news, showing genuine excitement, you know?
Being a good hype person.
Yeah. And while it might seem harder, being honest and open, even when communicating tough news, actually builds trust and stronger connections in the long run.
So it's about being real, being authentic, even when it's uncomfortable.
Right. And that can be a huge stress reliever for everyone involved.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Play, power, people.
3 key energizers. Right. And that sets the stage for what Abdul calls feel-good productivity. But what happens when we're still stuck, even knowing all of this? What happens when we just can't seem to get started?
That's where part 2 of Abdal's framework comes in. Unblock. And the first major obstacle he addresses is uncertainty.
Uncertainty. The dreaded unknown.
Right. That feeling of not knowing what to do first, what to focus on, what the goal even is.
Yeah, it's like being lost in a fog.
Exactly. And it can be a huge energy drain and lead to procrastination. Abdal uses this great analogy of a pebble in your shoe. Like, instead of ignoring it and trying to push through the discomfort, the best thing to do is just stop, take off your shoe, and get rid of the pebble.
It's so simple, but so true.
Right. So the unblock method is all about figuring out what those underlying negative feelings are, that lack of clarity, and then addressing them head on.
Get to the root of the problem.
Exactly. And when it comes to uncertainty, one super helpful tool is the concept of commander's intent, which is actually borrowed from military strategy.
Okay, military strategy.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
I know, right? So the basic idea is to have a super clear understanding of the ultimate goal behind a task or project, like the big why behind the what.
It's about having a clear vision, even when the specific path isn't clear.
Exactly. Abdal actually uses the example of the D-Day landings. Even when individual units were facing unexpected challenges, their specific missions got thrown off course, the overarching commander's intent to secure a foothold in Normandy was always there.
So everyone knew the ultimate goal, even to their individual plans had to change.
Right. And this applies to our own lives, too. We need to constantly remind ourselves of the bigger why behind the tasks we're doing. Why is this important? What am I ultimately trying to achieve?
So we don't get lost in the weeds.
Exactly. And to make sure our daily actions are aligned with that bigger why, Abdal suggests using the 5 whys.
5 whys. Like keep asking why until you get to the bottom of it.
Exactly. It's a technique that was originally developed by Toyota for problem solving.
Oh yeah, like to figure out the root cause of a problem on a production line.
Right. But Abdal suggests using it proactively, like to figure out if a task is even worth doing.
I see. So like if you're procrastinating on something, you can ask yourself why you're avoiding it. And keep asking why until you get to the real reason.
Exactly. It's a way of making sure you're spending your energy on things that actually matter. Like, let's say you're putting off writing a weekly report.
Reports.
I know, right? So you could ask yourself, why am I avoiding this report? Maybe the answer is because it takes forever. Then you ask, why does it take forever? And maybe the answer is because I have to gather data from a bunch of different sources.
Why do I have to gather data from a bunch of different sources?
Exactly. Keep going, because that's how we've always done it. And so on. And by drilling down like this, you might discover that the report, in its current form, isn't actually serving its purpose effectively.
And then you can figure out a better way to do it.
Right. So once you've got a clearer understanding of the why, the next step is figuring out the what, like turning that big abstract purpose into concrete goals and actions.
Okay, that makes sense.
But Abdal actually cautions against relying too much on SMART goals.
SMART goals.
Yeah.
You know, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound.
Yeah, those ones. He says research suggests that focusing too much on SMART goals can actually